laptop.
Oh, we're live now.
Okay, excellent.
Aloha snack bar, everyone. It's the one, the only, the dynamic duo, the ape and the man who is the master of the flux capacitor, who is right now mobile, traversing his way across the country to God knows where. And with that being said, also we are joined by none other than James, the Russian analyst, because it is absolutely frigid outside, and it is cold enough for the Russian bear to come out. With that being said, CJ, what's crack-a-lackin'?
Hey, good morning, V. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm hanging in there. We got a lot of things to cover by, but James is with us. James, good morning, buddy. How are you?
Doing well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, bro. What's going on your end, man?
Well, I wanted to come on this morning to comment about this article that came out on Thursday, March 16, on Yahoo News by Michael Isikoff, talking about retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and his son flying to Moscow for this RT event in 2015. And it's kind of old news anyway. I mean, people already knew about it. But the thing that they've done is the Democrats from the committee that is tasked with investigating the so-called Russian influence over the elections of 2016 have released this document, basically all the originals, copies of all the originals that Flynn had to submit for his update of his security clearance, because he had been a civilian and had been out of the military and retired from DIA and the military. He was a private citizen for a while. He had to go through a process where he submitted all the documents about his contacts with the Russians and with RT. So he provided the government with everything. The Trump administration, which then gave the documents to the House Democrats, and Republicans of the Intelligence Committee, or whoever is looking into this. I think it's the Intelligence Committees, for both the House and Senate. So they decided, of course, they're going to release these documents on a Thursday, right before the weekend. So all the talking heads can talk about, Flynn and how the Ruskies, paid him money and all this stuff before the weekend, when people just kind of tune out on Saturdays and Sundays. So what's interesting about this, like I said, the RT thing's kind of old news. I didn't really want to talk about that. What I wanted to talk about is that Flynn took an $11,500 speaking fee from a company called Volga Dnieper Airways, which is based in Ulyanovsk, Russia, which just is interesting because Volga Dnieper, VDA, is how it's known in the industry, is a super heavy air cargo company that specializes in oversized cargos. They use the Antonov 124 Ruslan aircraft, which was made in the Soviet Ukrainian SSR in the late 80s. They built the largest airlifter in the world, the Antonov 224, which some people have heard of, but there's not very many of those. Yeah, it's a monstrous plane. There's not very many of those flying. I think there's like one or maybe three or four left in the world. One of them owned by the Prince of Kuwait, and there's another two or three. They use them in the oil and gas industry primarily to haul super heavy rigs or pipelines and things like that. But the 124 has been a real workhorse and kind of an unsung hero of the so-called global war on terror, because a lot of people don't realize, people who are into military aviation, like the Guerrilla, that the C-5 Galaxy, those aircraft mostly have been retired and supplanted by the C-17, but the C-17 just isn't as big.
It's big, right?
For super heavy cargos and things, to move things around that need to get there tomorrow. Whether it's a major, huge part for an oil rig in the Russian Far East, in the Sakhalin field that Shell works on, or when you're talking about military equipment, when you need to get it there fast, and in particular, when you are dealing with Russian-made or serviced military equipment that is used by militaries funded by the United States Department of Defense, i.e. the Afghan military using Russian helicopters. That they've had this contract for a long time, and the senators have been complaining. McCain has wanted the contract canceled, et cetera, et cetera. How can we be funding the same Russian military industrial complex that's committing aggression in Ukraine, blah, 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 blah. And the irony of the situation is that what I wanted to say kind of in Flynn's defense is that, again, people don't know the whole story, that, VDA, and I'm not saying, should he have found another way to make a buck? I think, on balance, I would agree with what CJ said the other day regarding the whole Flynn controversy, that it was a mistake for Trump to make him national security advisor. He should have found another one. Now, that doesn't mean that it was a mistake for Trump to seek Flynn's advice and counsel. Two different things. Everybody's got a role to play, and I think Flynn had a role to play, and I think he's still playing a certain role. And I think when he went to Moscow, what he was doing, although he was a private citizen at the time and he didn't technically speak for anyone, is that he was conveying to the Russians, and this is in late 2015, that there is a group in the U.S., particularly retired military and other people, and it's not just Flynn. I mean, we're not just talking about one guy. We're talking about retired Lieutenant General Paul Vallely for another, who, by the way, came to Flynn's defense in the RT article that appeared on Friday, or late Thursday, early Friday, about this controversy. And of course, that's not an accident, because Vallely has probably accepted, a certain honorarium to, I don't think the Egyptian government's paid him. I don't think he's a registered foreign agent for the Egyptian government or a lobbyist, but he has probably accepted some form of remuneration to travel to Cairo. He was part of a big delegation that came and met with General Sisi after, that huge popularity-backed coup in Egypt, with the military and millions of people in the streets, overthrew the elected but very tyrannical government of Mohamed Morsi, who was backed by Obama.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm getting at is, I think Flynn and Vallely are friends, and I don't want to break any confidences again, but I know W has talked about his contacts among some of the retired generals, and I'm not going to name them. Vallely is not necessarily one of them. I don't know if the two have met. I know that W told me that they've been on certain lists together, emails and that sort of thing. Email chains about Benghazi and the truth about Benghazi, and bringing that out on Fox News. So essentially, you do have this industry of retired generals who go on Fox, and they all get paid through speaking bureaus. And essentially, when Flynn was asked, well, you appeared on RT. I mean, that's the Putin propaganda network channel. And he was like, well, CNN can be propagandistic too. And he got roasted for that. But, it happened to be a kind of a true statement. I mean, the CNN has been a Pentagon propaganda channel, and
1000%,
CIA
right.
at times. Everybody remembers the you can Google it and watch on YouTube the infamous Scud Stub video where they're playing this. The sirens are wailing, and they've got their gas masks ready to go and put on.
And they're on the roof in Atlanta.
Yeah, they're on the roof in Atlanta.
We're live in Iraq.
Yeah, we're live in Kuwait City, and whatever.
The Scuds are falling.
Riyadh, and the Scuds are falling. Right.
And the green screen moves away, and it's some guy in the background banging pots.
Yeah. So, getting back to the kind of the point I was getting at, because I guys, I mean, I realized that for Rogue Money to kind of take the next step, we have to, and I'm sure y'all will talk about this more on the show, tonight, which I'm not sure I don't think I'll be able to participate in, but nonetheless, when you talk about taking the next step, you want to be able to break original content that other people in the new media or even in the mainstream media aren't reporting.
Right.
And that's kind of what I want to do on the show today. After I came on the other day to talk about this very likely connection between the CIA and Shaltai Baltai, which again came up when, the Justice Department had their big press conference this week. And I'm trying not to go down too many tangents here, guys, but I'm trying to tie these things together in a way the audience would understand. When the Justice Department had their big press conference and said, "Oh, look at these evil Russian hackers who the FSB had hacked Yahoo," and they left out the detail that these are the same FSB guys that got busted and arrested for treason.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago and accused of working for the CIA. And again, it goes back to that whole Whitey Bulger thing. Did they know? Were they just using these guys as criminals? Or for intelligence purposes, and they just kind of turned a blind eye to the criminal side of what they were doing,
sure,
to make money, or worst case scenario, the most sinister motive, was it a false, not a false flag, but let's say a gray flag operation where they got certain Russians to do what they wanted so that they could come back and say, oh, look at what these evil Russians did. Hacking Yahoo and stealing, millions and millions of people's accounts or information or whatever.
Right. But the funny thing is that at this point, like, who the hell's going to believe anything that comes out of the CIA's mouth?
Right.
Even if they say, oh, yeah, it was the Russian hackers. But then everybody could look at the cocaine import agency and say, wait a minute. You guys are, it's been proven that you guys could actually do a hack and make it look like it's somebody else that did it.
Sure. But see, that becomes a problem because, look, just because the CIA could do false flags and probably has done false flags doesn't mean that, there aren't actual foreign hacks going on or foreign intelligence agencies using hackers. I mean, this story that's emerging, another story that's coming out this weekend towards the end of the week was about T-Mobile users. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, that T-Mobile's been compromised in DC. The cell network has been hacked somehow. I don't know all the details, but yeah, in DC. Okay.
Huh.
Think about how many generals, how many senators, how many CIA people all have T-Mobile phones, and maybe, just because they don't necessarily send classified data over them doesn't mean, again, that if they couldn't be, if they were using cell phones in an area that wasn't fully secured, or where you don't have to give up your cell phones to go into, where you put them in a box. I mean, think about, this is, again, something that Snowden talked about, right? That just because our government has the capability to backdoor everything, and that sounds so cool because we can spy on everyone and we have this godlike power, doesn't mean that other governments won't figure out a way to use some of the same technologies we embedded in these phones to create this panopticon against our agencies, right? I mean, why can't we keep any secrets anymore? Trump used to say we can't win any wars anymore. Well, we can't keep a damn thing secret because of all these damn back doors. The Chinese probably have got a bunch of them nailed. I mean, everybody wants to always point the finger at the Russians, but the Russians don't have the plants on their soil where these phones are coming out. Hello?
Right. Exactly. CJ, were you saying something?
Just in a couple of things, just in regards to Flynn and looking back through it, I think in part, something that Trump was being pretty adamant about was that something in terms of the direct conversation that Flynn had with Mike Pence was more or less why he felt that there was some conversation, something that was said that was inaccurate. So I think that they were willing to stick to him as far as supporting what his role and things that he did, visiting Russia. But I think it more or less is that, what does that conversation look like? So that's one part. And then the second part is, and it's always easier to quarterback these things, after the fact, but it had been very easy for the administration to have hit back and specifically stated, let's take a look at some of the things that Bill Clinton did while Hillary was Secretary of State. Let's take a look at these.
Hold on right there, CJ. What are you talking about that I did when Hillary was Secretary of State? What are you talking about?
Let's talk about these $100,000 speaking fees that you charge while visiting states that Hillary is directly in negotiations with.
Now hold on,
including Russia.
That's perfectly
including Russia.
That's perfectly normal, CJ. I don't know what you guys at Rogue Money are trying to do and what you all trying to say.
Including from Alpha Bank, the same dreaded Russian bank that the Trump servers were secretly communicating with, and that created the pretext for the FBI to have their warrant. Oh, wait, that warrant no longer exists. No, we pretended.
Yeah, so
we reported that warrant existed weeks ago in the New York Times, but now it doesn't exist.
I just did
whatever we tell you.
I just did that bank because there was beautiful Russian tellers. There's beautiful Russian girls that worked at that bank, and that's it. That's all it is. Because I love a Russian babe.
Sure you do, Bill.
And somewhere along the way, and I think
since he visited Moscow in 1967 or 68 as a Rhodes Scholar, right?
I did it so many times.
Right, exactly.
I got accused of rape. I tell you right now, even back then, I got accused of rape, and I said, I don't know how my DNA got on that dress either. It's all the definition of is, James. It's all about the definition of is.
Well, in part, a lot of other things that we're covering, I think somewhere along the way of Trump's transition in terms of being, more presidential, given these teleprompter speeches and everything. Somewhere along the way, I think he's allowed the Mike Pences, the Reince previous, the traditional political people to, to influence him, which I think he should do, but he still needs to keep that street fighter, bare knuckle brawler mentality that in DC, that's the problem. Everything is became so politically correct. So he's got to filter that. And we've seen a lot of infiltration of people that have his ear. So I think it's important for him to hopefully take a step back to realize that, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one last thing about Flynn. Two things. Again, VDA. Again, I heard negative things about VDA in the past. I'm not going to repeat them because it's hearsay, and I wasn't there I wasn't the guy in the room. It was just a client of mine who chartered jets from their maybe one other competitor in Russia that they have. Polyet Russian Airlines. Again, this was like 10 years ago. So it's been a while, water under the bridge. That the executive that I used to have as a corporate client, and when I was in financial services, I mean, he's long retired now, and his company got sold off to, well, I won't say which company it is because that would kind of give him away who it is. But let's just say it's long water under the bridge. He's pretty much retired as far as I can tell now. He's out of the game, out of the biz. I mean, he was already pushing in his I think he was in his mid 60s 10 years ago. So he's in mid 70s now. But yeah, the guy, I mean, there are, of course, as with anything, when you're talking about moving guns and moving equipment in countries of the Middle East, or particularly Iraq and Afghanistan, there are, of course, cost overruns. Of course, there's a lot of bakshish going on with the local officials, especially in Afghanistan and Iraq. But the bottom line is this, folks. When you're the U.S. government, the U.S. military, and you want to get more, and the Iraqi military tells it, if we need to keep kicking the crap out of ISIS and meeting the timetables that you guys have set down for us to liberate Mosul, we need more Hind gunships. Well, guess what? You can't go buy a Hind gunship and have it flown from, Colorado. No. And it won't fit in a C-17. You're going to have to put it on an Antonov 124, and it's going to have to come straight from the factory in Russia. I mean, that's the best way to get it, right?
Right.
So, again, the Iraqis, they're paying for a lot of this equipment now themselves. But, again, there is you'd be surprised how many Israeli electronics find their way into these into these Russian, quote unquote, weapon systems. I mean, V's aware of this, with the Su-30 MK. We've talked about that on the air before, how much of the electronics in the jet are Israeli. Right. So again, it's, that's a lot of what's going on here. And I just wanted to kind of clear that up. Flynn took 11-5. I mean, okay, big deal. Again, I don't think money, hindsight being 2020, I think Trump made a mistake making him national security advisor. But again, the vast majority of it, the whole hysteria about him talking to the ambassador is BS. The same ambassador came to the White House 22 times at least, and the whole the way in which all of the details of what Flynn supposedly said, everything except the transcript. We never saw the transcript of what he actually, quote unquote, promised the Russian ambassador, or didn't promise, was all leaked out, and that was, of course, totally illegal. It violated all the minimization procedures that are supposed to be in place to protect the identities of U.S. citizens whose information is collected just incidentally in the course of legitimate foreign surveillance, which, again, we survey their ambassador in D.C., and they survey certainly our ambassador and embassy in Russia as well. I mean, I never, when I visited Moscow, I've been down, Novi Arbat many times. It's right nearby. That's back in the 90s. Was casinos and hookers central. So conveniently located next to our embassy. But yeah, today it's much better. Trust me. Today it's been cleaned up. It's much nicer area now. It's far less seedy. It's very nice. It's one of the nicest shopping districts in Moscow, right up the street. So but again, I still don't like walking past the embassy because I know it's. There's got to be 20, 30 cameras around that place. They've got it covered from every angle. So, it's just how it is. And for the record, I've never been to the Russian embassy in D.C. I've gotten invitations to receptions there run by acquaintances, by all means, but I've never been.
Got it. I just want to make sure of your Russian connections here, James.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because you are, after all, the Russian analyst. When was the last time you used Russian salad dressing? Can you answer that?
I don't know. Probably about the same time I last had a shot of Russian vodka. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
I've got a bottle of Risky Standard here. It's a huge one, and I never opened it. I never had an occasion to polish it off with anybody. So I've been off on my own. Okay.
We'll have to make that happen.
Yeah, someday soon. So no, and again, back to the whole general Russian stupidity controversy thing. I mean, I've been saying way too many times, guys. I apologize. It's my on-air tick when I get too excited with what I'm saying. But the bottom line is that I think it's starting to peter out, and this whole Flynn dump just kind of smells like desperation. Oh, we got to keep the story alive this particular weekend. London Paul said it right on the show the other day. You can only create so much smoke so long, and I find it fascinating that the same people, Mike Morrell, this scumbag ex-deputy director of the CIA, who was saying we got to kill Russians, we got to make Iranians and kill them too, and make them pay a price for.
How about we use Mike Morrell as target practice? How about that?
Yeah, Mike Morrell, this scumbag who was saying we got to kill Russians, as if, well, who's this we, Mike? Who are you giving weapons to accomplish that objective? You and your 2 or 3 moderate unicorn buddies, or is it Hassan, the so-called moderate, who immediately turns around and gives his tow missile to Al Qaeda or ISIS? Who are we talking about? Who's this we, Mike Kemosabe? He came out this week and said, well, there's smoke, but there's no fire that we've been able to find as far as actual collusion between Trump and the Russians.
Well, here's the thing.
Isn't that interesting? Trump comes out on March 4th and accuses these guys of tapping him. And by the way, he didn't just say NSA. He didn't specify the agency. Right. You notice he didn't specify the agency. Mm-hmm. He said Obama's people did it, and that Obama had personal knowledge of it. But he didn't say, "Oh, I've got a smoking gun file that says Obama, personally signed off on it at this day, at this hour, with his actual signature. I, Barry Soetoro, whatever, order you, Joe Schmo, and NSA to tap Donald Trump, this 6 ways from Sunday. Right. That's not how it works, and it's become obvious that's not what happened. It's a bit more complicated than that. Whether GCHQ was involved, whether it was CIA, it was FBI, whether it was contractors, Obama's own version of Nixon's plumbers, people who were working off the books, contractors, security, firms, Booz Allen Hamilton. I don't know who it was, but the point is there were multiple groups. To survey a guy like Donald Trump and to survey his team, you needed a lot of people. And some of them are talking or have to be talking. Trump would not be this confident in telling Tucker Carlson Wednesday, it's all going to come out. I think you got a feeling more is going to come out in the next 2 weeks unless he knows.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. These idiots are playing checkers and Donald's playing chess.
Yeah, and you notice he's just giving them more rope, and they're doubling down, they're denying everything. They're saying, well, he's citing New York Times and saying he read it, but he was reading it in Breitbart, and no, the New York Times just said it was some of his associates who were talking to the Russians that were surveyed. Incidentally, the New York Times didn't admit that Trump himself was ever surveyed or Trump Tower. I don't know. That's not how I read it. Okay. Exactly. There's some room for ambiguity here, but there's no mistake.
Well, did you hear the latest from the Democratic leadership from very high up? They're already telling their constituents, listen, this whole we need to drop this whole Trump-Russia connection.
Yeah, Ben Smith of BuzzFeed. I've unfortunately interacted with him briefly once.
I feel sorry. I'm sorry to hear that.
A real scumbag. So-called journalist. BuzzFeed
he's a douchebag, bro.
Yeah, between the cat pics and the celebrity, skin. Clicks. What is BuzzFeed?
Nothing. That's why they'll be dead soon.
Yeah. So that's my whole shtick for this morning, gentlemen. I think I've run over 15 minutes by now. Any other questions for me before I go?
No, I
Questions
think you
from the
broke it down
audience?
awesome for us. Go ahead, V.
No. You did great, James. I have no other further questions.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No further questions, Your Honor. You're done here, James. Thank you for for joining us again. I was maybe next time you come on, maybe we could talk about the Russian operations in Libya.
Yeah, or in Brighton Beach.
Exactly.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, buddy. Take care. Thank you, man.
All right, take care, James. Thank you.
All right, so here we go. Real quick rundown. CJ, let's just bat out these headlines real quick.
Yeah, just real quick.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say real quick to stay on that narrative, V, because some of this other stuff we don't need to go. It's not as nearly as important, but I think that yesterday's hanging with Harley, I think, was very informative, and you and Harley pieced together the narrative of exactly what James is stating, and that's why it's so important. Is that the neocons and the fascist left are doing everything that they can from keeping the administration from having open dialogue with Russia. They're making it so toxic and poisonous. And, lo and behold, I don't know who's listening to us, but lo and behold, the Russian Insider releases an article, Liberalism Scream for Blood, conservatives go to bat with Russia. And it just details out some of the things that we're saying, that there's some people in the MSM, Tucker Carlson, Limbaugh, Hannity, are coming out saying, why can't we have a good relationship with Russia? Why can't we be friends?
Isn't it funny with the crazy lunatic left who is devoid of history, who hates and allergic to math, who are absolutely ambivalent to real economics? Well, isn't it amazing about the freaking left that when the Russians were the Soviet Union, I remember back in the 80s when Mikhail Gorbachev was coming out of his plane. I mean, the left were all lined up. They had their lotions in hand, and they began to circle jerk each other vigorously. Because, oh my God, it's Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet Union. They loved the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was the greatest. We're the big bad bogeys, and then on top of that, the fact that it came out declassified that Senator Ted, what is his name, Ted Kennedy, okay, the drunkard of the Senate, the drunken lion, of the Senate, the drunk, was basically asking the Russians to help intervene in the '84 elections to make sure that Reagan doesn't get reelected, and that they will do everything they can to put Russia in a favorable light. This has all been declassified. Now, all of a sudden, Russia's not communist anymore. They've learned their lessons about communism. They learned how stupid and disgusting it was. Putin hates it. They learned about, and they've never forgiven the Rothschilds or the Rockaboogers, about communism. They've never forgiven them. Okay, they've never forgotten. So, look, this system's killed tens of millions of their own people by a guy named Joe Stalin, who wasn't even friggin' Russian to begin with. Okay, so now let's just deal with that. Now all of a sudden that the Russians are out of this, they're free market economy. They have they are a superpower on the stage, and now all of a sudden the left, which used to circle jerk each other about the Soviet Union, now can't stand Russia. Oh, now they're Russian hysteric. Now they're hysterical about Russia. Is that amazing?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it is disgusting, but yeah, some of these other topics, I think we can table these until 4 o'clock. But I do want to plug one thing real quick, because I think this is important, and it ties right back to the interview that we're going to be releasing this weekend. And this will give a little bit of clue of what the discussion is going to be about. I'm not going to go into details about it, because I think you guys do a great job in that interview detailing why this is necessary. But the several senators have came forth and asked for a criminal probe into investigating George Soros.
Yep, absolutely. It is starting to get momentum. Like I said, man, we had the kickoff party in Hungary with Viktor Orban, and how the Hungarians went after Soros, started kicking out Soros NGOs. And now here we are with this. So this is really gaining momentum, CJ.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. With that being said, guys, there's going to be more to cover this afternoon during our Rogue Money Radio Show. We're going to have all the contributors on. And, thank you all for listening. CJ, why don't you give your shout-outs, man?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, appreciate all the love. We're gaining in subscriptions to our YouTube channel, so please keep that up. Keep encouraging friends, families, neighbors, whoever, your dog. But anyway, and then happy St. Patty's Day. Enjoy your day. Come back and we'll be live again at 4 p.m. with all the contributors. And that's all I have, V.
Absolutely. And again, folks, you can follow us on roguemoney.net. You can follow us also on Rogue Money on YouTube is at the Rogue Money, as well as the Rogue Money Facebook page. And again, check out our sponsors. If you guys are suffering from debt, you need a relief, a way out of making minimum payments and whatnot, or you guys are stressed out about your debt, or you just need to have your credit slightly tweaked so you can get a better rate on your home or a better rate on a car loan. Check out my guys over at myfreedomnow.us, and book your call with them today. With that being said, we are over and we're out.
Take it away, V.